you're watching the special edition of The Appointment. We're in conversation with the global CEO of Honeywell. You've also said that you've been able to sort of ring-fence Honeywell from global exposure because you've been able to pinpoint the hotspots, and you forecast that Europe is going to continue to see a difficult phase similar to what Japan went through. At this point in time, do you continue to believe that Europe is not out of the woods by a long shot? And which are the other exciting areas outside of India and China that you would like to focus on?
A lot to talk about there, I guess, because if I take a look at Europe, I said 5 years ago that they would have a Japanese decade. And the reason for that is that they were not politically willing to make the changes that they needed to in their social systems, their labor systems, that was going to allow them to truly be competitive and get their economies going again. I haven't seen anything other than a couple of countries, Spain, for example, where they have made the changes. In general, none of those changes are happening. They are going to do better this year and maybe next year, largely because of the euro-dollar exchange and oil prices making fuel less expensive. But my concern is that they're going to take this better growth, which could be like 1.5%, maybe 2%, and congratulate themselves for being out of the woods.
Push back the structural reforms that they need.
Exactly, and not do the things they need to. Getting back to your question on India, China, what else? There's this economic shift that's been going on for 20 years and is going to continue for another 20. And I won't get my numbers exactly right here, but this comes from Global Insight, so well regarded, come from high growth regions, with the biggest drivers being China and India. But it includes everybody. Indonesia, Africa, South America.
Let me continue with that. Acquisitions, and is that likely to be part of your strategy here in India? Because since 2002, you've been fairly acquisitive as far as Honeywell is concerned globally, but could we expect acquisitions being part of your India strategy?
Of course, we're always open to ideas when it comes to acquisitions. I have a very rigorous process for doing it. We are proof that the view acquisitions never pay is not true. It can absolutely be true if you have a process to do it and do it right. We have a very rigorous process we follow that has my personal involvement from the beginning to the end. We've done about 80 acquisitions for $12 or $13 billion in my time here. And that can very much be a part of our India strategy, but it's got to be a business that makes sense.
Any sector-specific areas that you're looking at?
All the stuff that we're in. But one of the things I like us thinking about in high-growth regions is how do you solve some of the issues that already exist and we perhaps aren't exactly in that business today? So examples, air quality, water quality, fuel quality. All three things we're in a bit, but we don't have an overall solution yet.
Staying with India, defense, and that seems to be the big area of opportunity that most foreign investors are talking about at this point in time. In your conversations as part of the US-India CEO Forum, how confident do you feel about real money, big money coming in soon into the defense sector in India?
Well, again, it's going to get back to how welcoming is the government to
that investment. Is 49% enough?
It's a start. It's better than when it was 25. Not as good as if it was 100.
It could go to 100 on transfer of technology.
It could. So that's all the stuff that needs to get sorted out. But I can say defense firms are very interested in the U.S. There's a lot of interest in India amongst Indian companies to develop that capability, working with the U.S. as partners. And I'd say there's a lot of interest in both the U.S. government and the Indian government to develop those relationships. So, yeah, absolutely. This is an area that could develop very well for the country and for U.S. defense firms. 100
billion to 500 billion, that's the bilateral trade target that both Prime Minister Modi and President Obama spoke of. Do you really see it happening in the next few years?
Depends how much change happens. It's going to be driven...
Given our past track record and given where things currently are, do you feel confident?
If the pace of change that I see right now continues, yes, absolutely. If we get done with the GST and go, thank God that's over with, then no, it won't happen. The pace of change has to continue. We're just beginning.
So would it be safe to say that...
I used to have, if we took turbochargers that we produced in our plant from one state to another, we used to have to stop at the border for 2 days. The state border. It's not like we were crossing into Pakistan. We were crossing from one state to another. That's ridiculous. That hurts productivity, hurts consumers. That's the sort of stuff that has to get blown up.
So if I were to ask you to prioritize what changes you would like to see this government take in the next 12 months, because you said it's a very, very slim window that this government has at this point in time, what would those be?
Well, GST is a big one. That's, I think, a bigger effect than people think. The second one would just be this drive on ease of doing business everywhere. Just everywhere in everything. And to the extent we can see those changes on ease of doing business, so instead of dealing with 13 different agencies or somebody just, you have a bureaucrat who's always figuring out, okay, here's how I can get this out of my inbox and put it back on whomever. That whole mentality has to change.
Whether it's the US or India, economics has often been hostage to the politics of the day. Do you feel more confident that perhaps in the US, post the elections, the US is going to be able to break free of the shackles of economics being hostage to politics?
Oh, I'd say if you're in a democracy, politics is always in the middle of everything. It's painful as hell. No matter what country you go to, it's always, economics is always a hostage to politics. And I've always said government has two roles when it comes to business. The first one is to regulate it. That part they understand really well. They like it. It gives them a chance to talk about evil companies and get some votes. But it is important. I'm not an anti-regulation guy because I really think there's a least common denominator problem that you run into if you don't have smart regulation. You
said in an earlier interview that you don't have to be right at the beginning of the meeting, you have to be right at the end of a meeting, and it's important as a CEO to get the direction of a company right more than charisma and wit and all of those things, which you have in abundance, by the way. But in terms of strategic direction, which are the areas that you're not currently in that you would like to take the group into?
Well, I can say there's two areas that I've always been intrigued with. And by the way, your research was tremendous, because I've said all of those things. There's two areas I've always been intrigued with that I found difficult to get into. The first is water quality, and the second is medical. Because both of those are just going to be long-term demographic trends. So both of those I'd like to be in.
Well, we wish you the very best of luck for the future, and thank you very much. Appreciate your candor, and thanks very much for speaking to us here on CNBC TV.
It's been fun. Thanks. Nice to meet you.
Well, with that, it's time for us to wrap up this special edition of The Appointment. We'll see you again next week. Till then, from the entire team, goodbye. Many thanks all.